Hello guys, so today what I'm going to be doing is looking at the installation of MySQL. So what I'm going to be doing is installing MySQL on CentOS, installing MySQL on Ubuntu, and installing MySQL on Debian. So what we have here, these are the three servers we have here. This is a Ubuntu server, this is a Debian server, and this is a CentOS server. So what we'll do here first is we'll start with the Ubuntu server. Now, after the installation, what I'm going to do is to also uh, connect to those MySQL servers. Um, um, Connect to those MySQL servers using MySQL Workbench. So we're going to see how we do that. So first, this is my server I have here, my Ubuntu. And for this Ubuntu I have here, let me check the version of Ubuntu we have here. So we see here we're using the release 2004. So we're going to be running that. So in order to run installation of MySQL on Ubuntu, the first thing we will have to do here is to first of all update the packages. So we're going to run sudo apt update. Oops, sorry. Apt update. Actually, password. Provide a password. So this is just going to update the packages, which is good for you to update the packages before running the installation of any software. So so that is done. And the next thing we're going to do is basically just run the installation of MySQL. Realm install MySQL hyphen server. So we run that. Oh, yeah. These things usually it comes up and it's kind of really annoying to get this out. So this is one thing with Ubuntu. So let's see how we can clear this out. Um, what I'm going to do here is let me let me first of all go ahead and see if I can clean that out. lsof var lib, and I'm gonna clean out the log packages, and it's on dpg log, and I'm gonna run the same thing, and I'm gonna clean that for apt and list and the log. Clean that, and I'm gonna clean the same thing. Just clear out this cache in apt, and I'm gonna clean that on the archives, the log as well. Okay. So the next thing is I'm gonna kill this process, which is 7459. Kill -9 7459. Operation not permitted. Okay, I'm going to do sudo here, kill that. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go ahead and remove all of them. What we just, I'm just going to remove those logs. All right. I'm going to remove this one as well. And I'm also going to remove this one. Okay. All right, let's try to run a command again. Uh, yum, just run that again. Okay, that should be working fine. And then say yes, we want to run the installation. So it's going to take a little while and get a MySQL server installed. So it's not going to take long, maybe just a couple of seconds here and we should be done. Okay. So when this is done, the next thing we're going to kind of run a security script which is provided when you run the installation of MySQL, and this script is going to take us through setting up of the actual MySQL root password. Um, when we get that set up, then we should be good to go. So just give a couple of seconds here and we should be done. Okay. So when this is going on, you could see where the files are being written here. And you could see the MySQL CNF files. You see where you have your log files, and you can always refer to that if necessary. And one of the files we're going to edit um, because we will try to perform a kind of connection to that server. So we will need to edit some of the files to allow remote connection. But I think we'll do that with Debian and CentOS. But yeah. So I think we should be done in a couple of seconds here with this. Mm, 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 mm. Okay, so sometimes it can take a little while depending on your internet connection or maybe your resources of your server. So yeah, but basically it doesn't take that long. So it should be done very soon. Yeah. So installing MySQL is kind of mostly a straight process. Even though, as we're going to see, that some of the locations of the file based on the different operating systems might be different. And yeah, some installations they're similar, but yeah, I can say they almost look the same, but yeah. Okay, so we should be done here anytime. Okay, I think it's processing the triggers and that should be good. Okay, so we're good. Let me just clear my screen so that we can see better. The next thing is we're going to run that script, which is going to be the MySQL SQL installation script. So uh, MySQL secure installation. I'm going to run this script. Then it's going to ask us for the password. Do you want to validate that password? I'm going to say yes. Now it asks here for the strength. What's your password strength? For this demo, I'm just gonna leave it at low. All right. So for low, I'm gonna put 0 here. Then press enter. Then I'm gonna put my password. I'm gonna repeat out my password and say, do you wish to continue with the password provided? Yes, I want to continue with that password. Do you want to remove anonymous users? If we're on anonymous users, do you want to remove it? I'm just gonna leave it there. It's just a test box. So do you want to disable root logging? No, I don't want to disable that. I can use root logging to do that. Remove test database. I don't want to remove the test database. I'm just going to leave that. Then reload the privilege tables. I'm going to say yes, reload the privilege tables. So with this done, then you should be good. All right. And and that should be done with the installation of MySQL on Ubuntu server. Now let's try to test a login. So if we do sorry, sudo MySQL, you see that we log in directly into the server, but it didn't ask us for any password. Now, one of the reasons why it didn't ask us for the password is because um, we need to set, we need to, because right now it is being, even though we log in as root, is being authenticated using the auth socket. So since they're using the auth socket from the OS, it's not asking us for that password. And we can see that by querying a view in MySQL user view. If we run select the user, we want to see the user that is there, and then we want to see the authentication. That is the authentication string. And you also want to see the plugin, right? And we also want to see the host. We query that from the MySQL user view, all right? So look at this, you see that root here actually is using the auth socket as I mentioned earlier. So basically what we're going to update that so that it uses the MySQL native password. So we're just going to update that for native password. All right. And you do that by running alter user, and then we're going to specify which is the root user, and we're just going to leave it to be on the local host. Right. So we're just going to leave that on local. Yeah, just leave that on this local host. And it's identified, sorry, identified by identified with, and we're going to specify the MySQL native password. All right. So native password, MySQL native password. And we specify the password. I'm just going to put the password to be Postgres, all right? Just a simple password. So when that is done, we've updated that, but it has not taken effect yet. So for it to take effect, we need to flush the privileges. Now, some people who've been working, let's say with Oracle and let's say Postgres, you will understand that when you update configuration files, you will either need to, in Postgres, you will either need to reload or you either need to restart. In Oracle, it's kind of a little bit different. You might either do a scope SP file, scope both, or scope memory, just for changes to take effect. With MySQL here, since we've kind of updated this, we'll need to instead run what is called flush privileges. So all you do is run flush privileges. Flush privileges. Yep. Yeah, flush privileges. And that's it. So it takes effect right away. All right. So even after updating that, if we run this command we ran earlier, we see that it's been changed here. Earlier it was auth socket, so we're having MySQL native password here. So with that said, what we can do now is let's exit this prompt and let's try the connection again. Connecting as MySQL, we're going to specify the user root and we're going to say password. Now, if we just try to run the same thing we ran earlier on to connect, we're going to have this error. And since it's not using auth socket again, that is why we're having this error here. So now we try to connect specifying the user root, and we say provide a password because we want to provide a password. So it asks us for that, and then we type our password, and then we're able to connect, right? So now our connection is working fine. Okay. Now the next thing which I want to show you here is that um, um, I'm not very well the version of MySQL which we're running here. We just want to show that is if you run MySQL admin, right? MySQL admin, and you put -p, you run it as the root user, and then you look for the version. We're going to see that we're going to see we're going to see the server version we're running here. All right, it gives you MySQL server admin version. All right, everything. It tells you the uptime, how long it's been up, 7 minutes 34 seconds. All right. Okay. The next thing is now that we have MySQL running, if we run systemctl status MySQL, we see that the service is running, right? Sometimes the service is running. Now the next thing is we are able to connect. Now remember we able to connect to MySQL. Let me just connect again to MySQL. We can see the databases that are in MySQL here. So we could see that for now, what we have here in MySQL is we have we just have just default databases there, right? Nothing really much, okay? And we can decide to see the tables that are there as well. If we do show tables, um, show tables. Let's. I don't think we have any tables in the MySQL database. If we try to connect to the sys database, if we say use sys, so when you say use sys, you're just changing the database, right? So now we are in the sys. If we type again, they show the tables, we're going to see a whole lot of different system tables here. So these are the different system tables that come with MySQL, right? Okay, now that we're able to connect to MySQL and see install and connect to MySQL, I want us to install Workbench. And Workbench is really kind of really good because with Workbench you can connect to servers that are running remotely, or you can also connect to servers that are, you know, that are that are running locally, and it gives you kind of a GUI interface, graphic user interface, which you can really see a lot of information going on. So to get that done, we're going to go to the apps here to install the software, Ubuntu. We're just going to give it a second for that to open up. Mm, That should open up pretty soon. Okay. Mm, Okay, so let's wait for that to pull up. And the first time we're opening it, so it kind of downloads some interface and some stuff. So when you're opening it the second time, it won't go through that process. So through this Ubuntu software installer, you can install different softwares here in Ubuntu, right? So for MySQL Workbench, what you can do is we can click here on search and search that software, right? We're going to say MySQL Workbench, and I think it's going to pull up, going to search for Workbench. So sometimes it's good to have a good internet connection. So we have MySQL Workbench here, so I can click on it and I can take install. So it's going to ask me for the password. So I need to provide that password. So you need to make sure you know your password. So it will start the installation process. Depending on your network, again, it might take a little while, but this should this should go a little faster. Okay. Mhm. So when we've installed Workbench, so Workbench is installed. That was kind of a little fast. So we can close out this menu here. So with Workbench installed, you can go here and you can see the different apps that are there, and you will see MySQL Workbench here. So we can open up Workbench. So what we're going to do is try to use MySQL Workbench to connect to this MySQL server that we have installed here now. So we use that to connect to that server. Okay. So so by default, when you open MySQL, it automatically detects because it's MySQL runs on the default port of 3306. So it kind of, we already have a connection string here. So we try to connect. So we click to connect. Yeah, it gives you this error here, and some of you see this error if you're using Ubuntu. Kind of, I've seen it a lot of times, but maybe some uh, um, I've seen it a couple of times. So now you can close this. Even if you try to create a connection, if you try to create a connection, you still have the same error. If I try to create a connection here and put it as test connection, and then I leave the server, look back, and I put a password here. All right, I put a password. I say okay, and if I try to test, see, so it keep popping out this error here. So I'm just going to close it up, and we're going to see a way to get that fixed. So uh, in order to let me exit out of here, clear my screen. So in order to bypass this issue, this error here, which is kind of really annoying, there is a script, there is a command which you can run to get rid of that, error. Okay. Um, okay. Okay. So we're going to run this command. Just kind of align my SQL workbench. So we're going to run that. And for some people, I might provide this also in the description if you want. So after running this command, let's go ahead again and open up our workbench. And this time we expect that to work. So here, if I click on this, now you see it's kind of showing me up password to put my password to connect to the server. So I put insert. Now you see, now we're connected to my SQL workbench. All right. Now here, where I am here, it's the actual server itself. Right. It's the actual server itself, and you can see there are quite of different metrics that are showing up here. About MySQL, pull out some operating system and different information here, which is really good. All right. You can look at the dashboard as well. So and you can see exactly just that this is just a new server. We're not running any update, delete, we're not running anything. So you can actually have a look at MySQL from here. All right. Client connection. You can look at the client connections there, and really helpful. Performance report, you can also look at that. Logs, you can look at that. Now let's go over here to schemas. Now here, what we see here is we have just one default schema. Remember, we were able to log into this SYS database and we saw those tables. Remember the tables we saw earlier, right? So those, and we saw different, and those were, some of them were just normal views, as you could see from here. Uh, Table views and a lot of stored procedures and all lot of that. So even from here, you can actually create a database, create a table here, and you can kind of just go through a couple of things only from this particular, from here, right? So let's make this a default schema. You can right click and make it a default schema here, so that whatever we do here, whatever query we run here, it should be on this table here. So if we run something like select star from mysql dot user, right, and we, oh, this is select star, and we run this query, so you're able to see an output here displays you well, right? And also, if you look here, we don't have much table. We have only one table there, right? So you can actually create a table there, right? And you can create a table here and you can see that. Okay, let's just go ahead and create a sample table. Let me paste this command, which create a table, which just does a simple create a table tutorial DBS. So if I create that, that should have been created. So if I just kind of refresh this, I should be able to see my new table here, right? So this is a table we just created. Right? You can also decide to create a schema here, which is basically kind of like, just call it a database or whatever. So I'm going to create one here called Benson, and then I say apply, and it's going to show me the query. So it's going to tell me the actual query it's going to use to create that, and I can say apply and close. And here we could be able to see that we have a new one here, right? So if I decide to make this a default schema right now, there I don't have any tables yet. Okay, but if I run this same query here on this particular database now, so I've just run it again here since I made this a default. So if I refresh this now, I should be able to see a table inside, which I just created inside Benson. And it's the same thing here. Like if we kind of try to connect over here, we should be able to see all of that. If I do show databases, right? Should be able to see what I just created over there. And then if I do like use Benson, right? Kind of looks to be case sensitive. So I use Benson and I do show tables, all right? So I'm able to see my one table there, right? Tables inside the same table which I created on my SQL Workbench. Okay. Okay. So this is it with with Workbench, and there's something I want to show you here again is if you want to add a connection, right? If I want to add my own connection, I can decide to come here and give it a name like test connection, and I leave it at that. I just leave the root user and I put a password here. Okay, and I do okay, and I test the connection if it works. So my connection is successful. I say yes, and I say okay. Now I have a new connection created here called test connection. So if I click on it, I should be able to connect to the database as well. All right. So we're going to see how we can create some more connections, but this time connect to remote servers, the ones we're going to go ahead and install. So that is it for installing of MySQL on the Ubuntu and installing Workbench and connecting to Workbench. Now the next thing we're going to do here is run the installation on Ubuntu. So I have an Ubuntu server here. So this is my Ubuntu server. Let me connect to Ubuntu. Debian, sorry. This is my Debian server. So I'm just gonna call up my tool here, make this a little larger. So this is Debian here. Um, okay, so in order for us to work to install with Debian, it kind of almost the same thing like you know what we what we did with Ubuntu, but it's it's a little different. You know, the commands are not. At some point, we have the same commands, but not that really much. So let's see the version we're running here, LSB release, and do minus A. Let me see. With Debian, let me see. We should be able to get um, let me see what I typed there. Oh, I made a mistake. It's supposed to be L underscore, not this. I was wondering why it's not working. Okay, so now here we're using Debian, and we could see here that we're using release 10 here. All right. Okay, so let's clear our screen. Now let's start with the installation of MySQL on Debian. All right, so we're doing it for Debian 10. So going ahead, the first thing we'll have to do is just do the same as we did earlier on, update the packages, run apt update for the packages. So we first of all need to update the packages first. So it's going to take a little second to update our packages. And then when the packages have been installed, we will need to install some prerequisites. So there's a GNPG package, which is kind of an open source implementation of OpenPGP. So which we are going to install, which is recommended. So in order to do that, we're going to do apt-get. So apt-get install. We're going to put GNUPG. Okay. So this is one of the prerequisites we need to do for Debian, which is this is just an open implementation of OpenPGP. Right. So you need this installed for Debian. So we press enter. So that that is done. And the next thing which we're going to do here is we are going to run wget to kind of install that package. So and then again, I'm going to put this on the description below. So we're going to kind of try to contact the server in order to get those packages installed for for MySQL on Debian, and we're just going to contact through this site in order to get those installation files, and we're going to be using 08 13. We're going to be using one, and we're going to say all Debian. So we're going to run this to pull out the Debian package from MySQL. Okay. And it looks like I have something missed out here. I have to put a slash here. All right. So do enter. It looks like the widget package is not there. So let's do something. Let's do apt-get install. So let's install the widget package. It looks like it's not there yet. So with that installed, we can run our command now, which pulls out our package. If we list here, we should be able to see the package we just pulled down, right? The installation package. So in order to get this package installed, we will need to use the dpkg, which is kind of used to install, remove, and inspect Debian packages, Debian software. So we'll need to use that. So we'll do sudo dpkg, and specify -i, which will now specify a MySQL package. right? So we do enter. So it's going to pop up this screen here, and you can just kind of just follow up the screen and run the and continue. So we're not going to be doing. So it gives you a couple of different which product you want to actually install, right? Just gonna take OK to install that. So after that is done, um, you will need to update. So after we've added that repository, we will need to update the OS packages again. Remember we did it earlier. We will need to update that again. So we'll have to run sudo apt update again. Okay. So that it's gonna re-update another packages again. So when that is updated, then now is when we start the installation of MySQL. So you see that is kind of a little bit different from what we did with Ubuntu. So yeah, it's kind of a little bit lengthy. So but install. So now we can start the installation. We say you want to install. We say yes. We want to go ahead. So now it's running the full installation of MySQL. Right. At some point, it might require me to my password. Okay. So here it is. So I'm gonna put my password here. I'm gonna take next. I'm gonna retype a password. Take OK. I'm gonna take OK. And I'm just gonna use legacy authentication mode. And I'm gonna go through all that. So now it's going through the, all the unpacking and installation process. So it's going to take a little couple of seconds here for this to finish. So when this is finished, definitely it will automatically start MySQL service, and you will be able to will be able now to run MySQL secure install and all of that. Okay, now we're done here. So now what next? So what we can do now is let's just go ahead and check MySQL is running on systemctl status MySQL. Oops, sorry, MySQL. So we could see there that MySQL is running. You see that it's active and running. That's good. Now, what you can do here now is to run the MySQL secure installation, which we ran earlier. MySQL secure installation. Remember, we ran that also in Ubuntu. So run this. Ask for the password. I can put my password here. You want to change the password? I can say yes. I'm just going to put that for low, which is 0, not much. Say you want to change the password. Let me just change the password. That's fine. The reason it's asking this because I gave a password during the installation. So, but that's fine. Do you wish to continue with the password provided? Yes, I want to continue with that. Remove anonymous users. I'm just going to leave that to no. Disable root logging. I say no. Remove database tests. I say no. Reload privileges. Yes, reload my privileges. So I'm all done. So if I do my SQL, access denied for root. Okay. So we have to specify the user root and so the password. We put our password and then we're in. So you can see from here that basically we just done with the installation of MySQL and we're able to connect, right? Which works just fine. Now, one other thing which I want us again to look at is the same thing we did earlier on when we set the native password. Let's just see here what actually is being set for this. Which let's look at the authentication string. Authentication string. We look at the plugin. We'll look at the host, and we're taking it from MySQL. .user view. Okay, and here we could see here that um, it's still using that. Here it's using. Okay, see, what by default is using the normal cache SHA-2 password type, right? For the root, which is fine. But if we want to change that, it's also good. We can still go ahead and change that to native, which is still fine as well. Right. So just for this demo, I'm going to change that, and we'll see. So I'm just going to run author user. I'm going to specify what's author user root, and it's going to be in local host and identified with MySQL native password. Alright, I'm gonna put the same password here to Postgres. It says say identified by corresponds user near user. Oh, look like I made an error somewhere. Oh, auto user. It doesn't come up. Oh, auto user. Alright, and it's kind of weird because yeah, auto user. I don't know. This I needed to change the terminal because this terminal kind of won't allow me to copy this. Okay. Identify with identified with MySQL native password by Postgres. Right. Auto user, we put the name of user, we're going to specify localhost, identify with MySQL native password by that. Okay, that should be fine now. And let's go ahead and flush the privileges. So that should be fine. All right. And if we log in, if we log out here, and we should be able to still log back in. All right, still good to go. So we do show databases here. We still see kind of, you know, the normal basic default ones that are there. So this is the installation of MySQL on on Ubuntu on Debian. Now that we have MySQL running on Debian here, what I'll try to do is to connect to this MySQL on Debian while I am in Ubuntu. All right, so let me go back to Ubuntu and let me try to test the connection there. So let me log in. Log in. So here, let me exit here. And let me go back and pick out the IP address. So let me exit from here. So let me look at the IP. So we see here that the IP is 181. That's basically 192.168.9.1.181. So let's go back over here and let's try to connect. Let's use MySQL. You put -h 192.168.91.181, right? And then we're going to specify the user to be root, and we can specify ask for password. And let's put our password. So now what you're seeing here is it's giving us an error here that this particular file, this particular server where we are, this 151 is this server. It's not allowed to connect to MySQL. So what you need to do is that you need to go to, we need to go to this Debian server and allow this other server to be able to connect. Now, how do we do that? If we come over here in Debian server here, what we're going to do here is let's connect back to the database. Now, when we connect to the database, we will need to add that server. Now, let's verify that server's IP. Okay, this is 151.152. Okay, so let's come back here and we're going to add the user root to be able to connect through that 152. So we need to update a particular view, the MySQL DB view and the MySQL user view to accept connection from 152. So what we're going to do is we're just going to run update MySQL dot DB is for the DB. We're going to set the host and we will specify that host 192.168.68.91.152, which is the IP address of the other host, right? And then we specify where DB is equals to. We're just going to connect to MySQL, right? We're just going to connect to MySQL. If you had a different database name, you could specify here. But for now, we're just going to connect to MySQL. So that has run, and then we will also need to update the MySQL user view here, user, and use that same, and we will have to specify that particular user. And here we're going to say user, and we're going to say the user to be our user root. And again, if you have any other user, you can specify. So after doing this, the next thing is we're going to flush privilege so that everything works. Everything should take effect. All right. Now that we've allowed that remote session, let's go back over here and try to connect again. Let's come back here to another server. Let's try to run the connection again. Put our password. And now you see here that we're able to establish a connection, right? And we're able to establish a connection here, which works fine. In other instances, if you're not able to establish this connection, there are times whereby you will need to open up the MySQL configuration file and you will need to change the bind addresses there to 000. Now, what I mean is that if you're not able to connect, what you could also do is that, and the reason for this is just basically because I think that file doesn't have it. So if we do /etc, we do /mysql, and I think there's other mysql conf, and then we look at mysql configuration file. So I think let's, here we're going to use nano. Okay. So this file is because here we don't have any, right? So normally if you, it's just allowing connection already. If not, we needed to have specified the bind address. And the bind address is you need to put to space say, okay, the bind address should be coming from everywhere, right? Okay. What I mean is you can specify the bind address here, okay? And then you can specify this to be 0.0.0.0. That means it should accept connections from everywhere. But since it didn't have that, okay, it was accepting connection from everywhere. All right. So now we see that we're able to connect from here to we're able to connect to us to, now we're connecting from Ubuntu to another MySQL server running on Debian, right? From Ubuntu to Debian. And this is the IP address of the Debian server. Now, Let's look over how we can create another connection to connect using using um, MySQL Workbench. Let me close all of this. Okay. So we can decide to create another connection, and we'll call this Debian. We'll just call it Debian MySQL. Right? It's running on MySQL and Debian. Then we have to put the IP address 192.168.91.181, and that is where it's running. The password, I'm going to put the password here for the user root, and let's test the connection. Connection is successful, which is good. And then now we say, okay, now we have a connection to the Debian from Ubuntu. So we click this, now we're connected to server. Now this server is running remotely. It's running on a different server. So we're able to connect there, and we're able to, we can create, let's say we create a schema here on this and call it Debian, Debian DB. All right. Okay, apply. It's going to give you that. You apply it. Okay, you can close that. So we have Debian DB here. And what we could also do is that, you know, with that Debian, we can decide to, you know, make this to be our default schema here. And we can open up a query tool. Let's just create a sample table here. All right. Create a sample table there. We can call another, give it another name again. This TB12. We create it. We can call it another name. We can call it tutor. We create it. All right. So we've created like 3 tables. So if we just refresh this now, we should be able to see a couple of tables. We've created like 3 tables here. And if we go to the remote server on Debian here, right, because we connected remotely, we should be able to see that password, yes. Let's see. Let's see. Okay. Oops. Sorry. Enter. We have a connection here. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, we changed that from localhost to that. So let's let's do it this way. Let's connect to its server with its IP, right? See how it goes. 192.168.91.181, which is its IP of this server. Serve. All right. We have an issue there, but we're going to check that later on. Let me see. Um, hope we let's run systemctl restart MySQL. All right, let's just restart MySQL. And let's try to connect to a server here. Maybe I messed up the password or something. Yeah, it looks like maybe I missed out the password or something. Okay, let's see here. We're still connected here, which is fine if we try to connect. Yeah, and this is because we kind of already specified, where the root user should be receiving password, and that's the reason why, right? Where the root user should be receiving connections from. right? There are other ways in which we can kind of go out of that to if we want to grant you know um, permissions or connections to that user from anywhere, right? We can run. Let me see here. Um, let's filter out this default schema and let's say we decide to let me we decide to run an update, right? Let me see here on Debian here. Okay, this is on Ubuntu here. Mhm. Okay, so let me go back here to Debian, open up this. Okay, so what I'm gonna do here, I'm gonna test another, oops, sorry, this configuration here for, um, let me just try out to test, let me run an update, here. So I'm gonna update MySQL, MySQL dot, I'm gonna update the user and I'm gonna set the host, and in this case I'm not going to set the host to be anything. I'm going to do this. So where user equals to root, okay, where user equals to root, and I'm going to run this command. Execute the select portion of the script or anything. There's no selection. Yeah, so let me do this here. I think I've updated that. And then the next thing is I'm gonna flush privilege, privileges. I'm gonna flush that. Okay, and let me see over here, Debian. Gonna try the connection again. Okay, so this is something that we needed to update on this other side here. But this is, I'm going to show you the reason why we're having this. But as you could see from here, it is because we kind of set the connection of inside the root user to be able to connect to that database alone from that particular IP address. All right. So now with that done now, what we see here is that we've installed MySQL on Debian. I've also installed it on Ubuntu, and we've installed MySQL Workbench, and we're able to establish that connection from MySQL Workbench into that server, which is running on 181, and the connection is successful. All right. The next thing which we're going to look into now is installing MySQL on CentOS. All right, so I'm going to log into CentOS server here. So I have a CentOS server here. So um, this is cat/etc/os release. All right. So we're running CentOS and it's CentOS 7. All right. So I'm going to clear my screen here. Now, running MySQL on CentOS 7 or installing MySQL on CentOS 7, which is basically like running it on Linux. Um, on Linux, it's almost the same, but kind of a little different. To do that on CentOS, what you can do is you can go to the actual website where you can download the actual packages. Right. So what I'm going to test here is to go to the actual website, and we're going to see how you could get those packages from there. Right. So so you can go to this website here, and you can see the packages there. That is, you remember, it's almost the same location we went through for installing on Debian. So since we're using 7, we're going to go with Linux 7 here, and all you can do is click on download, right? So I'll click on download here, and I'm not going to log in or maybe sign up. I'm just going to say no thanks for now. This is just a sample stuff I'm doing here. So I'm going to save the file. So it's just a very small file. You can see here the file's already been downloaded and the download is complete. So I'm just going to leave this window for now because there's something here I want to show you. Okay. All right. While I'm here, let me go to where this file has been downloaded. It's been downloaded to /home. Let me see. I think I might need to increase this so that some people will I want to see clearly. All right. Let me expand this again. I think this is better now. So I'm gonna go to /home/Benson, and then I'm going to go to downloads. Then I'm gonna list this download. So this is the file which we just downloaded earlier. Now, there's MySQL provides a means of you trying to validate this file to make sure that this file is authentic, that it's not been changed or something didn't change about this file, so that it's easy for you to know that, okay, was it modified or is it still intact? So we can decide to check the integrity of this download before running the installation. And we can do that by checking the hash on that particular file. So we can do MD5 sum, and when you click enter, it's going to pull out a hash here, and it gives you the same file which you downloaded. Now the question is, how do you know if it's authentic from this hash? Now the way to do that is to compare this hash with what you downloaded earlier. So now if you look keenly here, you will see here that this is the file I downloaded earlier. I downloaded Red Hat 7 and I click download here. So if you compare this hash, this MD hash, with this value here, they should be the same. So you see here that D here ends with 153. If you look everything about it, it it's the same here. So this shows that this file has not been changed. It's the integrity is still there, and kind of you're safe, right? Okay. So in order to get this file installed, we will need just to run the installation of that file. So you can just run rpm minus ivh, and then we put our file here, which we downloaded. Okay. Now, when you run this, what happened? What just happened here is that it created some repository files, some repo files. This is what it did here. So if we try to check those repo files, we're going to see that there are two repo files that are created. So if we try to list the location where we have repo file /yum.repos.d, if we list this location, we're going to see two MySQL repos that are created, and it was because of this command we ran here. So with this repo created now, we can go ahead and run our installation for MySQL. All right. So now we can be able to do a yum install. All right. A yum install MySQL server. Okay. Yum install MySQL server. So this will go ahead and install MySQL. All right. So it might take a little while, and sometimes depends on your internet, how much your internet. So, but normally it won't really take that much time. Okay. So that should finish very soon. Okay, I think we should be up, should be done pretty soon with that. Mm, mm, Just have a couple of seconds. That should be done. So when this installation finishes, we will need to we kind of still have to go through the same process we did last time with the other installations, where we will install um, the MySQL secure, we'll run the MySQL secure installation script. So which will still do that, but only after we've started up MySQL. So if I really remember, it looks like when it does the installation, it doesn't start up MySQL. Remember with the other previous ones we did on Ubuntu and also in Debian, it kind of just starts up MySQL when it's done. So yeah, we'll check that out when this one finishes, which I think it should finish pretty soon. Okay. Mm, mm, mm. Okay. Yeah. We just give it like maybe a minute or so. It should be done. Okay. Hmm. And there's a little bit of difference with my SQL here, is that when you're running MySQL on Windows, on Linux, what happens is that um, it kind of creates a temporary password file, which you're going to see in a particular um, kind of a log file, whereby you will need to run that temporary file. You will need to have that temporary password, before you can run the secure installation script. So it's kind of a little bit different with the other ones we saw earlier. So this, it will just give you a password. But then when you use that password, you will need to change that password to, um, by default, when you log in immediately, you need to change that password. So it will prompt you for that anyway during the time when we're running that script. Okay, so I think this should be done in a minute. Yeah, okay, I think we're almost done here now. Okay, so good. So we're done. So let's check if it did the installation and actually started up MySQL here. So system CTS status. MySQL, MySQL-D. So we see here that it did not start up MySQL here. So we will need to start it up. So that should start up MySQL. And if we do status, should be able to see that running. Okay. Now that it's running now, what happened is, as I mentioned earlier, it create a temporary password here. So if we look here in this location, they create a temporary password in this file. So if you grep this file for temporary password, you will see the password they created there. So as you could see here, this is a temporary password. Right? So you could see there that this a temporary password right here. All of this. So you need to have this. Um, you need to have this password in order for you to complete the installation. So what we'll do here next here is that we need to run the normal script we've been running earlier, the MySQL SQL installation. And then we will need now here, if you look at it here, it says enter the password for user root. Now the password is asking us to enter here is this password. So we need to copy out this password and we paste that, give it that password, we press enter. Now it's going to ask us for a new password. All right. So which you need to provide. So put provide and I'm going to specify a password. And it says you want change password for root. Estimate yes. Oh, kind of just had to leave that one. Do you wish to continue with the password provided? Yes. Remove an MS user? No. Disallow root lock plugin? No. Remove test database? No. Reload privileges? Yes. So we're almost done. So that should be fine right here. All right. So from here, if we could still use, we could still log in. If we specify, oops, sorry, we specify the root, oops, specify the root user, and we put that password, and we're in. So we are connected now here, and we're good to go. All right. Now that we're here now, that's fine. If we needed to, if we need to kind of really also connect to MySQL Workbench from the other as the other user, we can still do the same thing. Right? The same thing we did earlier. We can do the same thing to connect to the other side. Okay. So if we exit from here and if we do the if config here, we're gonna see that the password. Oh, it looks like this is in a different domain here, which will kind of give us issues not to connect. So let me change that here. I'm just gonna change this to not, and let me see. Let me just change this here. This is this kind of an optional something to do because I know it will not because I had to set the pass the IP here to be static, so I'm gonna remove that and I'm gonna reload this. Now, if I check the IP here, it should change. Now it's this, which is the same subnet now, which is kind of okay. I just breached that connection there. So if I go over to my Ubuntu server here and I try to connect to that Ubuntu server, it will give me the same error. Right? Let me exit from here and let me just clear out my screen. So if we try to run a connection, and remember the other one we have is 169. If I provide a password, right, it gives me this issue that it cannot connect to that server. Right. And there's one thing I just want to check if uh, if the firewall is running here. So I'm gonna stop this firewall. But if you're running in your your the production stuff, definitely you won't stop that firewall. So if I try that same connection again, all right. So this is what I was expecting to see. You see now that I stopped the firewall, we have a different message here. Here it was saying that it could not connect there. But now here it's saying that this particular host is not allowed to connect, right? So we could still go ahead and do the same thing that we did over earlier there by updating that particular. Let's just quickly do that. So let's just log in here and just log in here and let's just run the update user update mysql.user. All right, then we're going to set host and we can decide to specify that particular host 192.168.91.15152, which is that remote host, right? Where user equals root, right? Alright, so we've done that. So let's flush privilege. So let's flush privileges. And let's try to test the connection again over here. All right. Let's try to test the connection again over here. All right. Now we see that we're able to connect. So those are some of the things you might want to make sure you do since, before you can connect to that server. Now that we're able to connect remotely now to that, to the server running now. Now we are on Ubuntu and we're connecting to a server running on, you know, on the CentOS 7. Since we do that, that means we can also create another connection here, and we can create a connection here. We can call it Centos MySQL, and we try to give the same connection string we have here, which is 192.168.1.169. We use the same root, and here we're going to specify its own password, which was kind of different. Yes, and then we test the connection, successful, and I say okay. Now we have a connection now to CentOS. So we open up this, we're able to connect to our CentOS server, right? So if we decide to create a schema here, and I decide to call this CentOS DB, I just say apply, and I say yes, and it created that. Now you can see I have CentOS DB, right? Okay, so even here, you could be able to do show databases, right? You see that I have CentOS DB already here at once, right? Even though I created it on a remote server, right? So you see you have CentOS DB here. Even though I'm on Ubuntu server here, so I actually created that on the Ubuntu server. So if I use this as, now there is no table in here, right? So if I create a table, if I create a table here, So we can go ahead and create the same tables we've been creating. Now it has created a table here, right? So now if I just refresh this, I should be able to see a table in my CentOS DB. So if I go to the actual server where CentOS DB is running here, and if I do use CentOS DB, right, use CentOS DB, then if I do show tables, I'll be able to see that I have one table here, right? So I just switch database and I could see that. And it's the same thing. So if I go back here, so whatever you do on the, if I decide to create, change the name of this table and pull it sent. For example, I, now I have two tables in here, sent and this. So even though I'm creating it on Mysql Workbench running on a different server, back on my server here, I can still see that. So you see, we have those two tables there. So this is what I wanted to show you all. What we've seen so far is installing MySQL on Ubuntu, installing it on Debian, installing it on CentOS, and then is having a SQL bench running on Ubuntu, and we're able to connect to all the servers that we have installed remotely. So I hope you enjoy this. And if you have any questions, let me know. Thanks.